What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to the full 90. It is time for Champions League match week 7 predictions. It is finally back. And real quick, speaking of 7, we are 7 subscribers away from 52,000. You guys have been supporting the channel like crazy. We've been uploading pretty much every single day, and I really do appreciate the support. So make sure you drop a like and subscribe down below. Whilst you're down there, right up here is the current record for the Champions League series this season. That's obviously 108 tips for 108 league phase games, which does mean I have to give a tip for every game, even if I'm not as certain as I am with others. So to be in profit still, despite having to use every single game of the tournament, is pretty good going. And of course, as you can see, we currently have 11 correct scores, with 2 more in the previous game week. That was just something I added as some of you in the comments asked me to towards the start of the season. And right before we get into the first game, remember, as a thank you for 50,000 subscribers, I'm introducing Europa League predictions to the channel as well. So tune in tomorrow at 4 p.m, 22 hours time. But with that being said, let's get straight in to the Champions League predictions, and there is a lot to play for. Oh, I'm looking at my recording. It feels so good to have the Champions League background. It's back after so long. First up, we do have Kairat Almaty up against Club Brugge. Now, Kairat were, of course, the team that I predicted would finish 36th in the Champions League phase. They are just quite simply the minnows of the tournament, the weakest of the tournament. And Club Brugge, they need this win to try and get themselves a playoff place, and they should be good enough to get the win here. It's an early kickoff because obviously Kairat is so far away that they actually schedule the game for 3:30 UK time, which, you know what, fair enough. It's nice on the players. I think Club Brugge are going to win this one, and unlike a lot of teams that have nothing to play for because they can't qualify, I do think Kairat will play for honor and for pride. They obviously don't go into the Champions League phase thinking, yeah, we're going to win the Champions League. This is their first season there, and I truly think they are just honored to be a part of the competition. So they will play like they've got nothing to lose because they've got nothing to lose. So I'll give them a goal, but ultimately I'm going to go for a 2-1 win to Club Brugge, and I really like the odds, especially to sort of boost up an accumulator, of Club Brugge to win at odds of 1.53. You've got some other teams to win this week, the likes of Chelsea, Real Madrid, and the Bayern Munich. The odds are so low. Club Brugge to win here against, you have to say, the weakest, I don't want to say worst because it sounds harsh, but the weakest team in the Champions League. It's a really good pick. So Club Brugge to win for the early kickoff. And now moving on to the early kickoff, we have Glimt up against Manchester City. Glimt, their first season in the Champions League as well. Man City looking to try and secure a top 8 spot, but they look a little bit shaky, a little bit razor thin, and razor sharp in an attacking sense, but razor thin in a defensive sense. They have a lot of absentees and they just don't look very good. Sometimes, obviously, they had the Manchester derby at the weekend where they ended up losing 2-0 to Man United. Sometimes they play well and then Man United just get a result out of nowhere. But this time, although they edged the possession, in terms of clear-cut chances and overall gameplay, Man United were by far the better side and deservedly beat Manchester City because they had such a great forward line, Man City, albeit I think they take too many touches, pass the ball around too much in such tight spaces. I suppose that is to do with a lot of teams sitting deep when they defend and trying to counter them, so that does make sense. But defensively, they looked so vulnerable, and they have a lot of people missing at the back. So I think Glimt can really get at Manchester City here. With that being said, Glimt aren't doing that well in the Champions League. They are not at the level, and of course Man City still are a very good attacking side, and whilst it's one of the trickier away days to go to, I'm just going to shade it to Manchester City and say they win 3-2, but the tip is going to be both teams to score at odds of 1.57, probably about 1.6 at the moment, because Man City to win is between 1.3 and 1.4, and whilst I think they definitely will win, I can definitely see them leaking a goal. So I'm going to say Manchester City win 3-2. You could look at Man City and both teams to score as well. After this, it's FC Copenhagen up against Napoli, the two teams of the game week that are closest in league position. And not only are they the closest in league position, one apart, they are on the cusp of elimination and playoff spot. 23rd and 24th, obviously currently occupying the last 2 playoff spots. So this is an absolutely massive game. Copenhagen started off the Champions League season pretty poorly. Napoli, well, they're a bit interesting, aren't they? Some of the performances in the Serie A, the Mafia League, all I'm saying, it looks suspicious. But in the Champions League here, they've got to go and get a win. I think they are a better squad than Copenhagen, and I think they're going to get the win. I'm going to say a 2-1. The tip is Napoli to win at 1.85. We can talk about Serie A as long as we like, some of the suspicious results and performances, and I know for a fact with another team in this Champions League, I'm going to be touching on it later on in this video, but Napoli should be able to get the win here. After this, we travel to the San Siro for the battle of the two greatest defences. It's Inter Milan up against Arsenal. Arsenal basically qualified not only to the playoffs, but just straight to the round of 16 with their incredible unbeaten record, all wins in the Champions League this season. The only thing they're really playing for then in that sense is potentially 8 wins out of 8, which of course no team managed last season. But I don't think that will really matter to Arsenal. They sort of got away with it at the weekend, drawing with Nottingham Forest. They should have won that game. Gabriel Martinelli had a clear chance. Arsenal were, in my opinion, wrongfully denied of a penalty. VAR looked at it and said no penalty. It was a definite penalty. But with that being said, they need to focus on the league, and this really isn't that important. The only thing that this game has to offer Arsenal in terms of an incentive to win is winning 8 out of 8 in the league phase. And whilst that's cool and they would definitely take it, that doesn't win you a trophy, it doesn't win you anything, and you wouldn't want to risk or injure a player just for the sake of that. So, and also I think Inter Milan are a very, very good side. So I'm going to go for a low scoring game. I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. So I think a few people would probably pick Arsenal to win, but I'm going to go a step further with the tip. I'm actually going to say that Arsenal won't win as the tip. Inter Milan double chance and under 3.5 goals at odds of 2. That's how much I just think Inter Milan are really, really good, very solid defensively, but how Arsenal just don't need to win this. They need to win in the Premier League, and they have a massive game against a rejuvenated Manchester United that is honestly way more important. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. After this, it is Olympiacos up against Bayer Leverkusen. This one is a tricky game to predict, in my opinion. If I had to pick a winner, I'd probably go for Bayer Leverkusen, but Olympiacos, they are at home. I know they have struggled in the Champions League at home, but I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. Bayer Leverkusen whimpered against TSG Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga, losing 1-0. And even then, they had a rest because the game week prior, their game against Hamburg was postponed. So even if they had one eye on this game, which I'm sure they did, not scoring against Hoffenheim is not a good result at all. So for that reason, like I said, I think Bayer Leverkusen could win and should be the favourites, but I'll give Olympiacos a point and say 2-2. Ultimately, the tip doesn't change. It is and was always going to be both teams to score at odds of 1.61. After this, we travel to the Bernabeu for Real Madrid up against Monaco. This is a very intriguing fixture. Real Madrid will be chomping at the bit to get at this Monaco side. Obviously, Monaco this Champions League season doing Real Madrid a favour, you could argue, beating Barcelona with the help of a red card. But I think it's going to be a step too far. I think Real Madrid are going to win. Obviously, Real Madrid getting a comfortable win against Levante at the weekend. I'm going to say Real Madrid win this one 3-1. The odds for Madrid to win are so low. I've gone for a slightly higher odds tip at over 2.5 goals. The odds there are 1.36. And also that allows for some sort of freak upset, a 2-1 Monaco win, that sort of stuff. But ultimately, I think Real Madrid are going to get over the line and get 3 points. After this, it is Sporting up against PSG. Sporting, I think they're a very, very good side, certainly domestically. I think they're also a much better side at home. But PSG are just very, very good. Sometimes that's all it boils down to. PSG are awesome, and I'm going to say that PSG go away and win this one 2-1. The tip is PSG to win at 1.75. I've got a lot of 2-1s this week just because I think there is a slight favourite in my eyes, but I can't see the other team not scoring. Logic therefore suggests 2-1 because if they're a slight favourite, they might not win by a -1 handicap. So I hope that makes sense. I think Paris Saint-Germain get the win here. After this, we travel to the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium for Tottenham up against Borussia Dortmund. Borussia Dortmund absolutely smashing it this season. In the Champions League, they're doing well. In the Bundesliga, they're doing well. Obviously, they're not going to stop the train that is Bayern Munich, but they're doing really, really well. Tottenham, on the other hand, don't look good. They're very close to Dortmund. I think they're one place apart in the league phase, but they just suffered another awful loss to lowly West Ham United, who are having a terrible season themselves. And Thomas Frank is under a tremendous amount of pressure. And I think they're going to lose again here. Borussia Dortmund, particularly in the Champions League phase, have been awesome these last couple of years. So I'm going to say that Borussia Dortmund go and win 2-1. The tip is Borussia Dortmund draw no bet at odds of 1.8. The bookies can't really separate the two teams, but in my eyes, Dortmund look like the better team. Even as a little ACCA builder, by the way, if you're making an accumulator with different games, Borussia Dortmund to score is odds of 1.3. Just to score a goal. They could lose 4-1. It doesn't matter. Tottenham are going to concede to this Dortmund side. So if you're looking to boost up the odds of an accumulator, definitely add Borussia Dortmund over 0.5 goals because they're going to score in this game. And I could see them taking all 3 points. After this, it is... I guess it's a very important game. It's Villarreal up against Ajax, the two big disappointments and underperformers of the Champions League this season. Villarreal are on 1 point. Despite flying very high in the league, albeit they lost 2-0 to Real Betis, which was maybe not surprising, but not a good result. They've got 1 point in the Champions League. Current 24th place has 7 points. And there's obviously 25th on 6 and everything like that. So barring a miracle and all sorts of results going their way, which probably won't happen, Villarreal can't qualify anyway. Ajax, on the other hand, with their first win, which we did predict on this channel, are on 3 points. So if they win their 2 games, they'd finish on 9 points and stand a pretty good chance of making it to the playoffs despite an abysmal start to the Champions League season. However, I just think Villarreal are going to win. I just do. This is a bit of a gut feeling, so I'm going to go for a high-scoring game. Villarreal to win 3-2. The tip is going to be both teams to score and over 2.5 goals. If you want more than just individual tips per game and you want exclusive tips and accumulators, correct scores, stake builders, and my League Un predictions, which, by the way, over the last weekend were by far my most successful league out of all the leagues I did on YouTube. Serie A, La Liga, Bundesliga, Premier League, all of that. League Un, the predictions I did over on the Patreon, wiped the floor with all of them and was actually a very, very good week. So if you want access to all of that, then like everyone flashing up on your screen right now, click the top link and head over to the Patreon. That's patreon.com/thefull90. As I said, you get exclusive tips and accumulators, as well as extra correct scores, stake building challenges, the group chat. You can message me directly as well if you have a bet and you want my opinion on something. And of course, you do get a shout out in every single full 90 video. So if that's something you'd be interested in, please do support the channel that little bit extra and click the Patreon using the top link in the description. We also do giveaways over there. We had a recent $100 giveaway like we did at the start of the season as well. So if that's something you'd like, click the Patreon link, drop a like whilst you're down there, and let's get in now to the Wednesday fixtures for the Champions League. After this, we have an absolutely huge fixture. It is Qarabag up against Eintracht Frankfurt. Now, Qarabag started off the Champions League season so well. And Frankfurt, they started off terribly. You remember all the 5-1s, couple of 5-1 losses, a random 5-1 win. Mental. Qarabag are in the playoff spots at the moment on 7 points, and Eintracht Frankfurt, they are out of the playoff spots on 4 points. But with a win here, they could potentially get up there. And then, of course, they have another game. If they win that, they will most likely make the playoffs. And whilst Qarabag had a great start to the Champions League season, it's do or die now. And I think Eintracht Frankfurt have the firepower, the minerals, even the European experience at lower levels like Europa League and stuff like that. Eintracht Frankfurt should have enough to win this game, so I'm going to go for a 2-1 win. The tip is going to be both teams to score at 1.44. We know Frankfurt sometimes struggle to defend or keep clean sheets. There was I think they were in a 3-3 game in the Bundesliga over the weekend on Friday night against Werder Bremen as well, so lots of goals in Frankfurt games. Qarabag can definitely consider themselves likely to score, especially at home, but I think Frankfurt need the win more to get them on 7 points and give them a chance to qualify, so I'm saying Frankfurt will win. After this, it is a very intriguing game. It's Galatasaray up against Atletico Madrid. Now, if I just have a quick look at the table here, Galatasaray are in 18th. They've won 3 and they've lost 3, scored 8, conceded 8. Atletico Madrid are in the top 8 right now. They're in 8th place. Now, Galatasaray, I assume they'll be welcoming back Victor Osimhen from AFCON, but he will have sort of just returned. He'll be freshly returned. I assume he'll start, but I think Atletico Madrid can actually frustrate Galatasaray here. And I think I just have a gut feeling here that it will be low scoring. And I'm actually going to go for a bit of a smash and grab. Atletico Madrid to win 1-0. Now, the tip I think is very good because the bookies think this game is going to be very, very high scoring. And I can see why. On one day, this could be Galatasaray 3, Atletico Madrid 3. But if my gut feeling is 1-0, the tip's going to have to be under 3.5 goals. And I say it has to be that because the odds are 1.57. That's a lot higher than you'd normally get for under 3.5 goals, which would normally be around about 1.3. I get why the odds are like that, so I'm going against what the bookies think here, going with my gut and saying it'll be low scoring, frustrating for Galatasaray, like the Liverpool Galatasaray game actually that ended 1-0 to Gala. I think it could be a similar situation, but I think Atletico Madrid will ultimately be the beneficiaries of that and win 1-0. After this, it is Atalanta up against Athletic Bilbao. And I mentioned earlier in the video about 10 minutes ago about the Mafia League and some of the disgraceful performances we've seen in Serie A. And honestly, Atalanta versus Pisa absolutely takes the cake for me. I mean, Juventus against Cagliari was pretty awful as well. But Atalanta, they'd won loads of games in a row. They hadn't conceded a single goal. Pisa were winless in months. And then Atalanta go and play out a 1-1 draw. But that doesn't even tell the whole story. Atalanta made it 1-0 after 83 minutes. You think, oh my God, they got away with it there. And then Pisa score an equaliser in 87 minutes. But what was worse than that was for the first hour of the game, the first half definitely, Pisa dominated Atalanta. And it's only because of the lack of clinical ability and players from the Pisa camp that Atalanta weren't 2 or 3-0 down. It was one of the most disgraceful Serie A Mafia League performances I have ever seen. But ultimately, Atalanta find themselves in the very blessed position of being 5th in the Champions League, right in between Manchester City and Inter Milan. Incredible. It's like Villarreal in La Liga, they're right at the top, and in the Champions League, they're right at the bottom. Atalanta in Serie A are really underperforming, yet in the Champions League, European night, they've had good years in recent Champions League seasons as well. They just seem to be doing well. And Athletic Bilbao just don't look that great or that inspiring lately. So I'm actually gonna go for an Atalanta win. They beat Chelsea as well, Atalanta in the Champions League. That was quite fortunate. So I'm going to say Atalanta win 2-1. And the tip is Atalanta to win at 1.8. It goes against all my gut feelings, especially after that Pisa performance. But they need a response. And I think at home they can do it. After this, it is Bayern Munich up against Union Saint-Gilloise. Union Saint-Gilloise doing very well domestically at the top of the league. But so are Bayern in the Bundesliga. And in emphatic fashion. They are going absolutely nuts. They were pretty well dominated by RB Leipzig in that first half. They went into the halftime break 1-0 down, and you thought, oh, here we go. Could this be the rumblings of a loss? Because Leipzig were actually playing well and were deservedly in front. Yeah, Bayern Munich won that game 5-1. They won that game 5-1. People, at the halftime, it's 1-0 Leipzig. You think, wow, this Bayern team beat them 6-0 earlier on in the season. Where's that team gone? Oh, wait, there's a second half. Bayern Munich are absolutely relentless. Now, they are susceptible to conceding. Even when they put 8 past Wolfsburg, they conceded. So I think Union Saint-Gilloise can score here. I think it's going to be a really exciting game. And I've gone for a super speculative score prediction. But with Bayern Munich, how can you predict them? I mean, we have got multiple correct scores for Bayern Munich this season. We correctly predicted they'd beat Sporting 3-1. Last game week, they did. We correctly predicted they'd beat Chelsea 3-1 earlier on in the season, and they did. But this is just a bit of fun. I'm going to say Bayern Munich win, and if this comes in, it would be incredible. 7-2. I'm going to say it. Why not? It's just as crazy as the next. It's just as crazy as what could happen. So, Bayern Munich to win 7-2. The tip is over 3.5 goals at odds of 1.61. I thought about over 4.5 goals at odds of 2.37, but this could be your traditional 3-1, 4-0. So, we'll go over 3.5 goals, but why not 7-2 for the culture? After this, we travel to Stamford Bridge for Chelsea up against Pafos. Chelsea are still within a chance to get a top 8 finish. Pafos, on the other hand, they're playing for a playoff spot. They've got some, I would say, fortunate points in the Champions League. They beat Villarreal 1-0, even though they were dominated for vast periods of that game. Ultimately, in my opinion, Pafos are not a good enough side to make the playoffs, or if they do, to then cope with the playoffs. Chelsea, I think they are. They actually got a good result in the Premier League on the weekend, beating Brentford 2-0. I think they win here quite comfortably. I'm going to go for a Chelsea 4-0 win. The tip is Chelsea -1 handicap at odds of 1.44. The last time I went for a 4-0 score prediction and tipped -1 handicap at 1.44 was Real Madrid against Levante at the weekend. They won 2-0. And the handicap, -1 only, keeps that on side. So I think Chelsea will win, but to be a bit conservative, like with Real Madrid, I'm going for a -1 handicap as the tip. After this, we travel back to Italy for Juventus up against Benfica. Juventus losing to Cagliari 1-0. They had the chances, they were playing well, but it's the Serie A. What can you do? I think Juventus are actually going to win this game at home. They currently sit 17th. Benfica, right on the cusp of qualification. They're on 6 points in 25th. And I just think Juventus, with a win here, will of course secure them progressing to at least some stage of the latter stage of the Champions League, whether it's the round of 16, which is very unlikely, or what is most likely is the playoffs. I think they can do that with a 2-1 win. And the tip is going to be Juventus to win at odds of 1.8. After this, we travel to France for Marseille up against Liverpool. Marseille, odds to win at the weekend are about 1.6. Thought that was brilliant. They went and won 5-2. Liverpool drew 1-1 with Burnley. I almost felt like saying Liverpool lost 1-1 to Burnley. They should have won that game. The stats suggest it. The game suggests it. They missed a penalty. But ultimately, Burnley dug in and got a point. But Liverpool are favourites to win this game. And just like when they were favourites to beat PSV, and I predicted PSV to win, and PSV did, I don't know why Liverpool are favourites to win at Marseille here. So I think the French team are going to win. I'm going to say Marseille to win 2-1. But the odds are too good. Marseille double chance at odds of 1.83. I don't see how Liverpool go away in the state that they are and beat this Marseille side. Yeah, they could, right? And that's the reason the odds are the way that they are. They could win, but I don't see it. So I'm going for a Marseille 2-1 win. After this, we travel to England, to the north, to St. James's Park for Newcastle up against the aforementioned PSV. Now, if we look at the table here, PSV are right there in 21st, Newcastle in 12th. If Newcastle win this game, you have to say they've definitely made a playoff spot, but could even make the top 8 if they win their last 2 games. PSV, they're on 8 points, and I think realistically, if you get 9 points, you're probably going to be okay for the playoffs. So I think PSV will be not super happy, but I think they'll take a point here. PSV are a very, very good side, and Newcastle are a really, really good team at home. They did stutter a little bit against Wolves with the 0-0 draw, but I think this is going to be a draw. I'm going to go for a 1-1, but I think genuinely either team could win it, Newcastle or PSV. So the tip is going to be both teams to score at odds of 1.53. And ultimately for PSV, like I said, that puts them on 9 points, pretty much secures their playoff spot. Newcastle, it puts them on 11, definitely secures their playoff spot. I think they're already in the playoffs, really. So I think Newcastle will be pushing for the win because they still definitely have the chance to finish in the top 8 and get to the round of 16. But I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. And the final game is Slavia Prague up against Barcelona. Now, Barcelona, well, it involved in one of the most controversial games of the Sunday yesterday. I'd argue the most controversial was probably AFCON, the final. What a mental final that was. Ultimately, actually, it ended 0-0 like we predicted on this channel, but you just couldn't even guess the way it got to 0-0 and the way it ultimately ended. But Barcelona, alongside Stade Rennais from France, were victim of 3 disallowed goals by VAR. One of them, in my opinion, I think 2 of them, honestly, wrongfully disallowed against Real Sociedad, where they lost 2-1. They also had a penalty overturned in the first half, which I don't think they should have done. Barcelona played some beautiful, brilliant football and ultimately walked away with nothing. I think you've got to feel, if you're impartial, like if you're a Real Madrid fan, you're celebrating, right? But as an impartial football enjoyer, I think Barcelona were robbed. And I don't use that word lightly. Barcelona really should have won that game against Real Sociedad. And I think they did everything in order to do that. And they were just very unlucky. And I think they're going to bounce back here with a vengeance against Slavia Prague. Barcelona, they're also not necessarily, guaranteed anything in the Champions League, in the sense they're not in the top 8. They're not sitting pretty at the top. They're in 15th right now, so they need this win. They will want this win. Slavia Prague are on 3 points. They're not expecting to win, and when they don't beat Barcelona, they will be eliminated. So ultimately, I think Barcelona are going to win this one, and I think, as I said, it's going to be big. So I'm going to say that they win 4-0, and the tip is Barcelona -1 handicap at odds of 1.8. But there we go. That is going to do it for week 7 of the Champions League. It's super, super cool as we head into the latter stage of the league phase. And of course, these last 2 game weeks are extra game weeks that we didn't have with the original group phase. So it's super, super exciting. Make sure you leave your predictions, maybe your hot takes down in the comments below. Whilst you're there, drop a like, subscribe to help us get to 52,000 subscribers. That is going to do it from me, and I'll see you in the next video very soon.